Well, with NAMM 2024 right around the corner, today I want to sit down with you all and talk about what I believe are several guitar gear trends that are dying. I've been heavily involved in the guitar community for several years now, and I've noticed several shifts that have been happening with guitar gear, and some of the things that were popular in, say, the mid 2010s are not so popular right now. So I'd love to hear from you guys down below in the comments. One, do you guys agree with or disagree with my list as I present it to you all? And two, do you feel as though there's something I left out on this list that, something that we used to do back in the day that we really don't do here in present day in the middle of the 2020s? Oh my God, that's crazy to say, right? Anyway, subscribe and like this video. And with that being said, let's get on into my list. Number one, extended range guitars. More specifically, 8-string and 9-string guitars. Back in the day, like give or take around like 2012 or something like that, 8 strings and 9 strings were really starting to take off. One could infer that Meshuggah was the OG 8-string phenomenon, catalyst to all this stuff, right? But then also there were some amazing players that were starting to be known for using 8-string and 9-string guitars, such as Animals as Leaders, aka Tosin Abasi and Javier, After the Burial, Sarah Longfield, etc. Here in 2024, I feel as though maybe it hasn't necessarily died, but it certainly has plateaued. The trend of extended range guitars has certainly plateaued. They're really not as that big of a hype anymore, and it seems like almost every single brand out there delved into that trend for one period of time. I mean, even Dean Guitars did, right? But it just seems as though it's not exactly the most hot topic anymore. Something that's very similar to extended range guitars is multi-scale guitars. Again, I feel as though this trend is dying a little bit, and it's not nearly like the hot new commodity that once was, say in 2018, 2019 at the peak of the multi-scale phenomenon. Now it goes without saying, and I'm not sure why the I'm saying it, but here we go. Everything I say, take it with a grain of salt. This is one man's opinion, and I'm making general statements here. So if you get offended by anything I say, that's weird to me. But anyway, I just want to point that out. In case you're unfamiliar with what it is, basically the low strings are a longer scale to compensate for lower tunings. When you tune down a guitar, you run the risk of having intonation issues and tuning issues, but you compensate for that and have a multi-scale kind of fan fret guitar, and it fixes that problem. Getting back to Dean Guitars, I'm bringing up Dean Guitars because they are a legacy, iconic brand. They were even delving into the multi-scale fashion. But I feel as though extended range and multi-scales have more or less run their course. They're still around and they're still very popular. But the boom of the multi-scale and extended range phenomenon has certainly come and gone in my opinion. Number 3, active pickups. Hold on, pump the brakes. This comes with an asterisk. Let me explain. Back in the day, when I first found EMGs, say give or take around 2003, 2004, when I, really started to understand what a guitar was, when I was yay big, right? Active pickups were known for doing one thing, having a ton of output and having an active pickup sound, feel, and response. That phenomenon has died. I'm talking more or less about the tried and true EMGs and the Seymour Duncan Blackouts, for example. EMGs are not dead, Seymour Duncan Blackouts aren't dead, but active pickups just aren't one thing, and that is just full just compression and gain on 10 and just a sheer amount of firepower and output. Now active pickups have a bunch of different tone voicings and varieties and flavors and a whole bunch of different ways you can run active pickups. They're not just a one-trick pony where you just boost all your compression up in your signal and you're good to go, you're screaming, right? The best example and the most obvious example that I could use for the present day phenomenon of how active pickups are is Fishman Fluence. Now active pickups have fake acoustic simulation, tried and true active pickup sounds, and they have the passive PAF sound. They have single coils. It's wild. It's a great thing to have. It's not a complaint by any means, but gone are the days where active pickups are just one thing and one thing only, and that's just a fire breather of a pickup. I'm an old school kind of guy. I'm not old, but I feel like I'm an old soul in the sense that I kind of just like one thing, if it's gain on 10, I'm kind of stoked on that. The next trend I feel as though is dying is one-trick pony guitars. Let me explain. I'm talking about the old school Schecters, the Jim Root Stratocaster Tele Jazzmaster vibes, basically guitars that again, similar to the active pickup trope that I'm kind of explaining, guitars that are really only designed for one thing. Now, it seems as though guitars are trying to please everybody and get every single sort of sound out of one instrument. And from a business standpoint, that makes a ton of sense. However, from a consumer standpoint, personally, again, I feel like I'm an old school kind of guy. I like just a guitar that is good at one thing and is just solely designed for that one job. I'll give you a hypothetical. I'm not speaking on any brand or anybody specifically, but like, I love it when a brand comes out with like a showcase and a feature of like, let's just call it how it is, like a very like weapon-esque looking metal machine guitar. And they're ripping on it. It sounds super heavy and super crushing, but then they go, oh, but it also cleans up great. And it does clean sounds really good. And they start playing like jazzy chords and stuff. That always cracks me up, man. I always like get a kick out of that. You know, it's funny, like your core audience is clearly like heavy metal players, right? But like, you know, like they'd have to say like, oh, but it does cleans as well. And like they'd play like some dad rock or like some like, you know, jazzy bebop type of stuff. I always just find that super funny and I get a kick out of that. Again, I get it from a business standpoint, but like what I'm trying to say is like guitars are seemingly trying to cater towards every single genre, tone, and sound across the spectrum in one instrument. You know, it just seems like guitars that are coming out today try to sound like a guitar with humbuckers, try to sound like a guitar with single coils, like a Strat type of sound, right? You know, all these guitars have the multiple voicings that I'm talking about. They have Wi-Fi, they have Bluetooth, they have their own security system. You know what I mean? Like they always have like a million different things. And again, I get it, it makes sense. But the old school one-trick pony, this guitar is good for one thing and one thing only, isn't the norm here in 2024. Next thing that's a dying trend, unfortunately, is tube amplifiers. Now, it kind of pains me to say that because I love tube amps, and I've said it several times in this video. I'm an old school type of player, and you know, I like the real thing. Like, who doesn't, generally speaking? Like, I think that's cool. I think amps are cool, right? But thinking back to last year in 2023, there were very few tube amplifiers that came out. Off the top of my head, there's one from Angle, was like the special edition, limited edition, collector's choice, whatever, I forget the name of it. It's got an interesting name. The Mesa Boogie Mark 7, right? They went from 5 to 7, also interesting. There was a little Soldano out there, and then there was a Victory, the Super Kraken 2, I think it was called, and then the MT100. That's what, 5 amplifiers, 5 tube heads in a calendar year? That's not that much. And it's because of the obvious, man. You know, players are really just moving towards the plug-in game and the modeler game, myself included. I tour with a Quad Cortex now, and I've toured with, you know, everything in between from a MIDI head to my Marshall JVM. You know, I've done it all more or less. I've done almost every sort of configuration. But for me, in terms of convenience factor and being in a position where like I'm running MIDI to change my settings and my pitch shifting and my leads and rhythm sounds, they're all being run by a computer. And it is what it is. So like that's just a common trope of the times where like the old school approach of a tube head is very, very not popular anymore, and it seems to be dying, unfortunately. Are tube amplifiers dead? No, I'm not saying that. You know, here in a few weeks when NAMM 2024 comes out, I could be eating a ton of crow, and I hope I am as it pertains to tube amplifiers. But it just seems like tube amps, like tried and true old school tube amps, you know, just seem to be a thing of the past, unfortunately. And last but not least, guitar cabinets. Kind of goes hand in hand here, especially if tube amps are dying, cabinets are slowly becoming less and less of the norm. Case in point, especially in the live setting, a lot of bands don't even really use cabs on stage anymore. Some do, but a lot don't. And a lot just run right to front of house and then just use in-ears, and there's just a completely dry and clean stage. Again, I've done everything. I've done everything from, you know, a full half stack on stage. I've had both where I've had in-ears. I've had to go to front of house and a cab on stage. And then I've also just done the in-ears and no cab on stage. I personally think a cabinet on stage running in-ears and going to front of house in a modeler is my favorite scenario because you get like 3 signals going at the same time. Stage volume, front of house volume, your own in-ear monitor volume. But cabinets, they're just really clunky. They're hard to travel with. They're expensive. They're big. They're heavy. It's just going to eat up on gas. You know, when you're, you know, it's going to eat up on gas when you're lugging a trailer. All the above, all these things that I'm naming, unfortunately, is making it where cabinets are kind of dying and really aren't the thing of the norm anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if kids nowadays coming up don't even know what a cabinet is, and they're just running their amp sim in their MacBook or, you know, their laptop, whatever. So it pains me to say with these last two, tube amps and cabinets, they're becoming less and less of a thing anymore. So everybody, that's my video on some guitar trends that are dying. What do you guys think of my thoughts and opinions? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I love you all the same, and with every sort of video that I make, I just love to hang out with you guys, and my intentions are nothing but good. All right, so like I said in the beginning of this video, if you get offended by me saying this, that's really bananas to me, and I can't relate to that. But you know, most of you guys are awesome, and most of you guys just love to interact with me and hang out with me. So with that being said, I'd love to meet you down below in the comments and hear what you have to say, okay? Again, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video. Later.